My name is Elena Torres. I'm 37 years old, and for nearly 15 years, I lived inside a marriage where my presence slowly became optional. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. Marcus didn't wake up one day and decide to erase me. That would have required intention. What he did was far more common and far more damaging. He got comfortable. So comfortable that my existence turned into background noise, something constant, reliable, and therefore invisible. The irony is almost embarrassing. We met at an international architecture conference. I was 22, freshly graduated, invited as a keynote speaker to present my research on sustainable urban design. Marcus was 28, working at his father's investment firm, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He said he was impressed. He said he loved that I was ambitious. Back then, he actually asked questions about my projects, my ideas, my plans. He showed up to events, introduced me proudly, listened when I spoke. He even encouraged me to redesign our first apartment, a large downtown loft he'd recently purchased. I redesigned it from scratch. The project was featured in a major architecture magazine. The article described the work as belonging to a talented local designer. No name, not mine. At the time, I didn't fight it. I was young. I thought visibility would come naturally. I thought love meant compromise. What I didn't realize was that compromise, when practiced alone, slowly turns into disappearance. The shift happened so gradually that I didn't notice at first. One year, I was his partner, traveling with him, debating ideas over wine, planning futures that belonged to both of us. A few years later, I was being introduced at business dinners as, "This is my wife. She takes care of things." Things. Not my firm, not my clients, not my awards. Things. And the worst part? I did take care of things. I managed the house, the finances, the schedules, the gifts for his family, the social events that helped his career. I became his personal assistant, accountant, household manager, and emotional regulator, all while running my own consulting business from home, a business he liked to call your little projects. Funny how those little projects paid for vacations, renovations, dinners, and emergencies, while his salary quietly went into savings. My work funded our life, his work funded his future. By our 13th year of marriage, I had stopped attending industry events, not because Marcus asked me to, he never had to, but because I was exhausted from carrying two lives while mine kept shrinking. My office disappeared first, then my desk, then my voice. Eventually, I worked from the edge of the bed, laptop balanced on pillows, while Marcus occupied the office I had designed, the one he now referred to as his. That's when I started noticing the laughter. Marcus had always been social, always joking, but this laughter was different, softer, lower, intimate, the kind of laughter people reserve for someone they're trying to impress. "Marina, you're impossible," he'd say, smiling at his phone. "Beatrice, stop it. You're going to get me in trouble." He never arranged secret meetings in front of me, never sent explicit messages. Marcus was careful, but intimacy doesn't always leave fingerprints. Sometimes it leaves absence. He laughed with them, he listened to them, he shared stories with them. With me, he discussed grocery lists and whether the sheets were folded correctly. I could have confronted him, I could have cried, screamed, demanded explanations. But women who have been slowly erased learn something crucial. Information is power. So instead of reacting, I observed. Instead of begging, I documented. I did what I had always done best. I planned. But this time, I wasn't organizing Marcus's life. I was designing my exit. And I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to make sure he understood too late exactly what he had lost. Because invisible women don't disappear. They watch, they calculate, and eventually they decide. Awakenings rarely arrive as dramatic moments. They don't crash into your life like thunder. They seep in quietly, one uncomfortable realization at a time. The first crack appeared on an ordinary Saturday. Marcus was on the couch watching football, one leg draped over the armrest, beer in hand, completely relaxed. I was at the dining table finalizing a proposal for a sustainable restaurant project, a serious one, the kind that takes months of planning and pays accordingly. My phone rang. "Elena!" my client exclaimed when I answered on speaker. "We approved your proposal. 75,000 for the full consulting package. Congratulations. This is exceptional work." Before I could respond, Marcus turned up the television. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough that I had to excuse myself and walk into the bedroom to finish the call. When I returned, he didn't look at me. "You should charge less," he said casually. 75,000 is a lot for decorating. Decorating. I wasn't choosing pillows. I was designing waste systems, energy efficiency models, sustainable layouts that would save this client hundreds of thousands long term. But explaining that to Marcus would have required something he hadn't offered me in years: attention. The second crack came 3 days later. Marcus had left his corporate credit card statement in the printer. I wasn't snooping, I was refilling paper. The receipt slid out, and I glanced at it instinctively. Expensive dinners on nights, he said he was working late. Hotel charges in cities where he supposedly had meetings. Jewelry store purchases I had never received. There was no proof of physical cheating, but there was proof of something else. A separate life. One where he enjoyed my financial stability while investing his emotional energy elsewhere. Meanwhile, I paid the household bills with the money from my little projects. The third crack shattered everything. It was my father's birthday. He had passed away 2 years earlier, and Marcus knew how hard that day was for me. I woke up with swollen eyes, my chest heavy with the familiar ache of missing someone who had loved me unconditionally. Marcus walked into the bedroom, fully dressed. "Is there coffee ready?" he asked. Not "Are you okay?" Not "I know today is hard." Coffee. "I haven't made it yet," I said quietly. He sighed. "Elena, you're home all day. Is making coffee in the morning really too much to ask?" I was home because I worked from home, because I had built a business that allowed flexibility. But in his mind, home meant available. I went to the kitchen and made the coffee. And while the machine hummed, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't a wife, I was a service, an unpaid one. Worse, one I was funding myself. I served him the coffee with a polite smile. He didn't notice. He was already on the phone, laughing softly. "Marina, you're unbelievable. No, not today. Yeah, my father-in-law's birthday. Boring, honestly. My father was dead, and my grief had just become an excuse to entertain another woman." That was the moment clarity arrived. Not anger, not despair. Clarity. That night, while Marcus slept peacefully beside me, unaware that his comfort depended entirely on my silence, I opened my laptop. I created a spreadsheet. I've always loved structure. Numbers don't lie when people do. Column 1. Financial contributions over the last 5 years, my income versus his, what I paid, what he saved. Column 2, domestic and emotional labor, hours spent managing the household, his calendar, his obligations. I calculated market value. Column 3, shared assets, renovations I paid for, purchases made with my money but registered in both names. Column 4, the plan. Because I wasn't leaving impulsively, I was leaving intelligently. Before executing anything, I needed to answer one final question. Did Marcus even see me anymore? So I ran an experiment. For 1 week, I changed small things. I styled my hair differently, switched perfumes, wore bold red lipstick at breakfast. Marcus noticed none of it, but he did notice when his favorite cereal wasn't in the pantry. That told me everything. I wasn't his partner. I was part of the infrastructure, and infrastructure is only acknowledged when it collapses. Marcus believed I was replaceable. He was wrong, but he wouldn't realize that until it cost him everything he took for granted, and by then, it would be far too late. Every serious project begins with research, and I had 15 years of data on Marcus Bennett, his habits, his blind spots, and his unwavering belief that he was the smartest person in any room. But before I could design my escape, I needed to understand the legal foundation beneath my life. So on a Monday morning, I scheduled a consultation with Patricia Alcantara. Patricia was not just a family law attorney, she was an institution. We had met years earlier when I'd done sustainability consulting for her firm. She was sharp, controlled, and devastatingly efficient, the kind of woman men underestimated once. Only once. She studied me across her desk, removed her glasses, and said calmly, "You're not here for professional advice." "No," I replied. "I want a divorce." She nodded as if she'd been expecting it. "And I want to do it without drama," I added. "But I also want him to understand what he lost." Patricia smiled, not kindly. "Tell me everything." I did. The gradual erasure, the financial imbalance, the emotional intimacy with other women, the unpaid labor disguised as love. She listened without interrupting, taking notes with deliberate precision. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "I have everything." "Of course you do," she said. "You're an architect. You people don't move without blueprints." We spent 3 hours reviewing options, risks, strategies. When I left her office, I wasn't angry. I was anchored. The next phase was professional resurrection. For years, I had quietly stepped back from visibility, declining events, postponing speaking engagements, letting contacts fade. Not because I wanted to, but because carrying Marcus's life left little energy for my own. That ended immediately. I reactivated my professional network and began reconnecting with former colleagues. The response shocked me. "Elena, we thought you'd left the field. Why did you disappear? We tried reaching you for years." Tried. That word stayed with me. I investigated and found something I hadn't noticed before. My professional email had been forwarding messages to Marcus's account, something he'd suggested years earlier, in case of emergencies. Emergencies that never involved me. I changed every password that same night. When Marcus asked casually why he was no longer receiving emails, I smiled. "Security update. You know, cyber risks." He nodded without interest. He didn't even notice he'd just lost access to my entire professional identity. Within 2 weeks, I accepted 3 major projects I had previously turned down. One required travel. "I'll be in Chicago for a few days," I mentioned over dinner. He frowned. "But who's going to handle things here?" "Things?" I asked calmly. "You know, food, laundry, bills." "There are apps for all of that," I replied. "You'll be fine." He looked unconvinced. I traveled anyway. Chicago was freedom. For the first time in years, I was introduced not as someone's wife, but as myself. Elena Torres, consultant, expert, leader. Conversations flowed effortlessly, ideas sparked. I felt awake. On the second night, Marcus called me in a panic. "The washing machine flooded the floor." I closed my eyes. "Did you close the door before starting it?" Silence. "Oh," click. "Problem solved." I laughed, not unkindly but clearly. This man managed millions and didn't know how appliances worked. The final phase required restraint, strategic silence. I didn't tell friends, I didn't tell family, because the fewer people involved, the cleaner the exit. At home, I remained polite, helpful, calm, but I stopped anticipating, stopped fixing, stopped absorbing his chaos. Marcus didn't notice. He thought I was simply less emotional lately, which told me everything I needed to know. At night, while he slept, I built my future, document by document, connection by connection. Every step forward felt like shedding weight I didn't realize I was carrying. Marcus thought things were improving. He was wrong. He just didn't know the structure was already complete. All that remained was execution. Amateurs play 3 moves ahead. Masters see the entire board. Marcus believed he was in control because nothing around him appeared to be changing. Dinner was still served. The house still ran smoothly. I still answered when he spoke. That was my advantage. The game had already started. He just didn't know it yet. Patricia had been clear. If you want to leave cleanly, you can't act emotionally. You have to act strategically. So I opened 3 fronts at once. Not loudly, not aggressively, quietly. The financial shift. I stopped covering everything. Not all at once, that would raise suspicion, but gradually. A late bill here, a missed transfer there. When Marcus noticed, I apologized sweetly. I'm juggling multiple projects right now. Could you handle it this month? At first, he paid without comment. By the third time, he complained. By the fifth, he was irritated. By the 10th, he exploded. You've been forgetting things constantly, he snapped. What's going on with you? I'm overwhelmed, I replied calmly. My career is expanding. Maybe we need help managing finances. Help? He scoffed. You've always handled it. There it was. Always. I opened a separate account shortly after, quietly moving my income under the justification of business structure. He didn't question it. Money, after all, had always been my responsibility. The professional rise. At the same time, my visibility returned. I joined advisory boards, published articles, accepted interviews. I appeared on a podcast about women reclaiming professional identity. The host asked, "You stepped away from the spotlight for years. Why come back now?" I didn't hesitate, because I realized I was building someone else's life instead of my own. The episode spread quickly within the industry. Messages flooded in. So refreshing. Finally, someone says it. I want to work with her. Marcus heard about the podcast from a colleague. You never told me you were doing interviews, he said that evening. You never asked, I replied. That was the moment he sensed something was shifting, but still, not enough to stop it. The emotional withdrawal. This part required the most discipline. I stopped offering solutions when he complained, stopped soothing, stopped fixing. I listened politely and disengaged. When he reached for intimacy, I declined gently. Not out of revenge, but because desire dies when respect disappears. Interestingly, Marcus began trying again. Flowers appeared, takeout suggestions, movie nights, too late. Men like Marcus don't change, they panic. And panic isn't growth. Patricia called one afternoon. How's it going? He thinks things are improving, I said. She laughed softly. That's usually when they are about to lose everything. We chose a date, 6 weeks. That's when the divorce papers would be filed. But before that, there was one final move, the checkmate. Marcus's 44th birthday was approaching. Traditionally, I organized tasteful dinners at expensive restaurants, elegant, predictable. This year, I proposed something different. A party at home, I suggested casually. Invite everyone, make it special. His eyes lit up. He loved attention. Really, that sounds amazing. It will be, I said. And it would be, just not in the way he imagined. Because the most devastating victories don't come from destruction. They come from revelation. And soon, Marcus was going to see everything. Planning Marcus's birthday party felt strangely familiar. I had done this my entire marriage, orchestrating events meant to elevate him, impress his colleagues, and reinforce the illusion that his life functioned effortlessly. The difference this time, this party wasn't about celebrating Marcus, it was about revealing me. I planned everything with surgical precision. The guest list came first. Marcus's colleagues from the bank, especially the ones whose approval he craved. His circle of friends, including Marina and Beatrice, my sister and brother-in-law, several professional contacts from my industry, people who knew my work, my name, my value, and Patricia. When I showed Marcus the list, he barely glanced at it. Looks good, he said. You're great at this stuff. This stuff. I smiled. The decor was understated but intentional. No cryptic art installations. No dramatic symbolism. Instead, the walls featured framed magazine covers, printed articles, and conference invitations, all showcasing my work over the years. Awards, speaking engagements, published features, not flashy, undeniable. Marcus glanced at them briefly while adjusting the bar setup. Did you really need all this? He asked. It's part of the atmosphere, I replied. The night of the party arrived. I wore a red dress, not provocative, just confident. The kind of dress you wear when you're no longer asking for permission to exist. When I entered the room, Marcus paused. You look different, he said. I feel different, I answered. Guests arrived quickly. The apartment filled with conversation, laughter, clinking glasses. I moved through the room effortlessly, introducing people, guiding conversations, making sure everyone felt welcome. But every introduction mattered. "This is Elena Torres," I said to Marcus's colleagues. "She's the lead consultant behind several sustainable projects you may have read about." They looked at me, really looked. Recognition sparked, compliments followed. Marcus stood beside me, smiling tightly. Later, Marina and Beatrice arrived together. I greeted them warmly. "So you're Marina," I said with genuine calm. "Marcus mentions you often." Her smile froze. "And Beatrice, I've heard you have a great sense of humor. Marcus laughs a lot when he's on the phone with you." The air shifted. Marcus avoided eye contact. Perfect. Around 9 o'clock, I overheard Marcus speaking to a co-worker. "Elena organized all this," he said proudly. "She's amazing at domestic things." Patricia, standing nearby, raised an eyebrow. I caught her eye and smiled. At 10, I tapped my glass. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "Tonight is about celebrating Marcus. 44 years." Applause followed. "But I also want to celebrate something else," I continued. "Visibility." Silence settled. For a long time, I did everything behind the scenes. And when things run smoothly, people forget someone is making them run. I let that land. So I decided to step forward again, professionally, personally, to stop shrinking. Polite applause, then stronger. I also want to share that I've accepted a major consulting role this month, my largest project to date. Gasps, smiles, congratulations. Marcus's face drained of color. "And finally," I added calmly, "I'd like to thank Patricia Alcantara, an extraordinary attorney and friend, for supporting me during a period of important transition." Confusion rippled through the room. I raised my glass. "To growth, to clarity, and to knowing your worth." The room toasted. Marcus didn't. I stepped away, leaving him surrounded, but utterly alone. For the first time all night, he was visible. The morning after the party didn't arrive with drama. It arrived with sunlight, soft, intrusive sunlight that revealed everything that had been hidden the night before. Marcus woke up late. I was already in the living room, seated at the table, laptop open, coffee beside me. Calm, focused. He paused when he saw me. "Last night was a lot," he said carefully. "It went well," I replied without looking up. He poured himself coffee and sat across from me, studying my face as if trying to recognize a woman he thought he knew. "That speech you gave," he said. "It was unexpected. It was honest." Silence stretched. "You've been different lately," he finally said. "I've been myself," I answered. He frowned. "You've always been yourself." I closed my laptop and met his eyes. "No, Marcus, I've been convenient." His mouth opened, then closed. "I want to talk about finances," I continued calmly. "I reviewed our records last night." His posture stiffened. "For the past 5 years, I've covered roughly 70% of our household expenses. You saved most of your income. That imbalance ends now." "What are you saying?" he asked. "From now on, we split everything evenly, 50-50. "That's not realistic," he snapped. "You know my money is tied up in savings," I interrupted. "While mine kept this house running." His face flushed. "I also know about Marina and Beatrice." He stood abruptly. "I never cheated on you." "I know," I said quietly. "You just stopped choosing me." The words landed harder than shouting ever could. "This isn't fair," he said, voice shaking. "You're blowing things out of proportion." "No," I replied. "I'm finally seeing things in proportion." I stood and picked up my bag. "I want a divorce, Marcus." The word hung in the air. "You can't be serious." "I am." "What about our life? The house? Everything we built?" "I built a lot of it alone," I said gently. "And I'm done carrying us both." He stared at me, lost. "I didn't know you felt this way." "I know," I replied. "You never asked." I walked to the door and grabbed the suitcase I had packed days earlier. "Who's going to handle things?" he asked weakly. I paused. "You're capable," I said. "You just never had to be." I left. In the elevator, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. How do I turn on the dishwasher? I stared at it, then typed one word, Google, and blocked his number. The doors opened to the lobby. And for the first time in 15 years, I stepped outside without shrinking. People like to believe divorce is emotional, crying, screaming, accusations. In reality, divorce is administrative. It's paperwork, timelines, numbers, and power. And power belongs to whoever prepared first. Marcus didn't prepare, I did. The first meeting happened 2 weeks after I left. Marcus arrived with his attorney, a polished man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as someone who specialized in protecting executive assets. Patricia smiled politely. That's how predators recognize each other. We want to keep this civil, his attorney began. My client is willing to be generous. Patricia nodded and slid a thick folder across the table. Then this should be easy. The folder wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. It was devastating because it was organized. Section 1, Patricia said calmly. Financial contributions over the last 5 years. Elena covered approximately 70% of shared expenses, while Marcus retained most of his income in personal savings. She flipped a page. Bank statements, transfers, receipts. Marcus stared at the documents as if seeing them for the first time. Section 2, Patricia continued. Property investment, the apartment renovation, fully funded by Eleanor. We have invoices totaling $300,000. The renovation significantly increased market value, but the apartment is joint property, Marcus's attorney argued. Correct, Patricia replied, which means Elena is entitled to her share plus reimbursement for her disproportionate contribution. Another page turned. Section 3, unpaid labor. Marcus scoffed. You can't put a price on marriage. No, Patricia said calmly. But courts recognize the economic value of domestic and managerial labor, especially when one partner's career benefited from it. Silence. Then Patricia leaned forward. And finally, emotional misconduct. Marcus stiffened. There was no affair, he snapped. Patricia placed her phone on the table. We're not claiming physical infidelity. We're documenting emotional displacement, intimate communication, secrecy, and neglect that materially damaged the marriage. She tapped the screen. Recorded admissions, messages, timelines. Marcus's face drained of color. Our proposal is simple, Patricia concluded. Equal division of assets, reimbursement for documented investments, no spousal support on either side, clean separation. Marcus's attorney leaned back, calculating. This is substantial. It's accurate, Patricia corrected. Marcus finally spoke. You're doing this to punish me. I met his eyes for the first time. No, I'm doing this because I stopped subsidizing disrespect. The room went quiet. Patricia closed the folder. You have 72 hours to accept. After that, we proceed formally. Outside the building, Marcus followed me. Elena, you don't have to destroy everything. I turned. I didn't destroy us. I stopped holding us together alone. 2 days later, the agreement was signed. No courtroom, no headlines, no drama, just consequences and freedom. 6 months after the divorce papers were signed, I was sitting alone in a quiet cafe, reviewing proposals for a new project. Sunlight filtered through tall windows. The city moved outside, and for the first time in years, my life felt entirely my own. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena, it's Marcus. Can we talk? I stared at the message longer than I needed to. The old version of me would have felt anxious, curious, maybe even hopeful. This version felt nothing. I don't see the need, I replied, and blocked the number. Indifference, I learned, is not cruelty. It's freedom. Marcus became something distant, like a building I once passed every day but no longer noticed. But my life moved forward. With the settlement, I bought a smaller apartment, entirely mine, in the arts district. Bright, calm, filled with plants, books, and silence that felt restorative instead of lonely. No corner held his presence. My career surged. One project led to another. Invitations followed, articles, panels, lectures. I was invited to teach part-time at a university, asked to mentor younger women entering the field, and the most unexpected thing happened. I enjoyed it. I wasn't performing. I wasn't proving anything. I was simply living. Eventually, I met someone new, Daniel, an environmental engineer, thoughtful, curious, secure. On our first date, he asked about my work and listened. On the second, he asked about my values. On the third, I told him about my marriage. He paused. "How does someone not see you?" he asked sincerely. "They don't," I replied. "They choose not to." Daniel didn't try to fix me. He didn't compete. He simply showed up, and that was enough. One afternoon, months later, I ran into Marina by chance. She looked uncomfortable. I smiled politely. "I don't blame you," I said before she could speak. "What happened wasn't about you." She nodded, relieved. "He talks about you sometimes," she admitted, with regret. "Good," I said calmly. "Regret means he finally noticed." The final irony arrived quietly. Marcus's bank contacted me. They wanted me to consult on a major sustainable redesign. They requested me by name. I accepted. And during those meetings, I was professional, composed, excellent. Marcus sat across the table watching the woman he once minimized command the room. At the final presentation, the CEO said, "Where have you been hiding?" I smiled. "I wasn't hiding," I said. "Some people just weren't paying attention." Marcus looked down, and I felt nothing. No triumph, no resentment, just peace. Today, I sit on my balcony, coffee in hand, city humming below. My name is visible now, on projects, on publications, on my own life. I didn't disappear. I chose myself. And once you do that, you can never be invisible again. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Stories We Tell. Leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep creating stories about strength, self-respect, and new beginnings. Because stories that restore dignity deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for being here.